For me, yeah, it is where a lot of this began, for sure.
When you went back and looked at kind of what you liked the most about last season, as you kind of self-scouted, what were you most pleased with?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we were a dynamic, explosive passing offense, as is reflected in our, number one overall ranking, in a lot of the volume statistics, but also on a per play basis. A lot of those measures were, either at the top or very near the top of the league. I thought, that was an area we expected to perform well in, and we did. I think we grew in some areas of the passing game that we set out to grow in. So that was certainly something that, reflecting back, I thought we did a really good job of. Room for growth still, and we'll look to kind of expand on some things that directions that we may have headed last year that paid some dividends for us. So that's definitely the one that stands out.
What are the areas that you're hoping to grow in the most?
In the passing game specifically, or overall?
On offense.
On offense, yeah. I mean, again, I think there's room to grow in all areas. If you don't approach this time of year with a growth mindset and look at things that maybe you didn't do well enough, I think you're doing yourself, the team, the organization a disservice. So with that being said, some specific things, I think there's certainly room to grow in the run game. That's a nuanced conversation that could take us half a day if we had that time. We believe that the run game, we believe that the run game is a critical piece of who we want to be as an offense. We are afforded some opportunities in the run game because of how explosive we are and efficient we are in the pass game that I think are areas where we can grow. And I think we did some of those things. Again, like when you look at the volume statistics, we're obviously going to be at or near the bottom. We ran the ball less percentage-wise than any team in football. We threw the ball more percentage-wise than any team in football. That's not a goal of ours. I think we'll always be top 10 in how often we throw it and probably bottom 10 in how often we run it. That's just resource allocation and who our best players are. But there's room to grow there, so we're going to look and find ways to do that. And I think we can always grow in how we protect, how we organize the passing game. Obviously, we want to keep Joe on his feet. And again, nuanced conversation, right? A lot that goes into that. But that's an area that I think we can grow in as well.
Pitch, obviously, Chase Brown's workload increased kind of by default. Is that sustainable, or do you need a complementary piece to him?
I think we're, number one, super pleased with what Chase gave us and his development. And so we expect him to be a major part of what we do going forward. I think in a perfect world, there's probably a little more of a split than what you guys witnessed over the second half of last season. I think, we found ourselves in some situations in the second half of last season where the urgency was incredibly high in terms of, it's basically a playoff game. We got to win this game. Within the game situation itself, the urgency was incredibly high. And so in those situations, you want to rely on your best players. And we counted Chase as one of those people for us. As you step back and look at it big picture, I think that's definitely an area we're looking to potentially add some talent and maybe, supplement some of what Chase was able to give us. But we believe in Chase. He's going to be a huge part of what we do going forward.
What type of back probably fits what you want? When we talk about complimenting what Chase is for, what type of back does that think?
I mean, that can go a variety of directions, right? I mean, the easy answer is, Chase isn't the biggest guy. So maybe if you have an opportunity to add a bigger back with maybe a little more power repertoire to his game, that size maybe helps you in protection. But I say that with the caveat that Chase really stepped up in his protection as well last year. So I think you can kind of look at it with a little bit of a blank slate and say, let's find a way to add a really good football player. We know Chase has a well-rounded skill set, and depending on who we're able to add, we can mold it and we can make it work. And it's a credit to Chase's development that we find ourselves in that position.
And when you're planning for the offseason, do you have multiple options available to you with T. Higgins there, without T. Higgins, Jamar, all of the combinations that are possible in terms of your roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, there's obviously a lot been made of T's situation and with some other guys as well. Jamar, I love those guys. They're a huge part of what we've done, and I hope I get to coach them till the day I'm done coaching. But yeah, I mean, you have to look at the team as a whole, and you have to see where can you grow, how can you add talent, how does that talent fit in with those players, how does that talent potentially have to step up in situations where even when those players are on your team, we know the nature of this game. You might be without those guys for a game or two or three. And so you have to, be able to mix and match and build a resilient unit that can really step up to whatever challenge you're faced with.
Is improving guard play a priority?
I think so. I think you can look at how we played as a whole on the offensive line, and I think there's a lot to be proud of. I think there's a lot that we can get better at. And I say that knowing and believing that that's a responsibility of all of us. I mean, obviously, first and foremost, the players with their hands in the dirt out there executing, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? But there are things that we can do, I believe, how we set things up, how we scheme it, how we approach this time of year and our talent evaluation, and who we can potentially bring in and add to that group that can improve our play in that area. So yes, that's an area of focus for us. I believe that the players that we've had in that room are capable of growth and improvement, and I also know that we're going to do everything in our power to just make the production from that group better in whatever way we can.
What are you looking for? Scott's skill sets. Scott obviously arrives.
Yeah.
Scott Peters arrives with some certain characteristics. What are you looking for him to improve with on the offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott's a great addition. Scott is an expert technician. He is really good on field with correcting those guys, giving them feedback, helping them develop their toolbox in protection, in the run game, kind of throughout. And so I'm just really looking forward to Scott having the opportunity to again, work with the guys that are in the building. He'll have a lot of input when it comes to who potentially we're able to bring in, whether that be through free agency or the draft. And he's just an overall positive addition, I feel like, to the staff as a whole. So excited for what Scott's going to be able to bring us.
Because of the last couple of years, the short yardage game has been something that we've asked Brian and now you about,
Yeah.
and just kind of some of the ineffectiveness there the last couple of years. Do you feel like that is something that with the new offensive line coach that's something that you guys are addressing? Is it as simple as, you just are able to plug new players in there? Like, how do you guys get that to be a more effective part of your offense?
Yeah, well, it's something that we look at. I think, if you look statistically, we're kind of middle of the road last year from a short yardage 3rd and 1 run game. You look at our gun run game, I think we're 11 for 11. Under center was an area that wasn't good enough, and we need to get better there. And so it's about finding the match of what fits us, our players, how we call that down, how we scheme that down. It's a unique challenge maybe for a pass-oriented team like we are. We don't shy away from that. That's obviously who we are, but we have to be able to situationally run the ball at a very high level. And so there's no silver bullet when it comes to being the best short yardage team in the league, which we aspire to be. So we'll figure out what that means for us, and obviously we know success in short yardage means another set of downs for Joe and for our very talented receivers and for our talented back. And so as often as we can stay on the field, it's going to lead to more points.
At this point last year, none of us would have been talking about scheme evolutions, which ended up being what you did with Eric Hall. Like, none of us would have predicted that last year. When you look at stuff like tight end in the slot, as you project what that's going to be, do you look at it as some things you just can't know till August and September and kind of prepare to be its responsibilities again?
Yeah, there's an element of that. I really like some of the things we were able to do with Eric. I'd love to be able to continue to do some of those things going forward. A lot of that, as you reference, is going to be dependent on the skill sets of whoever the players end up being in that room. We're not going to try to, force a square peg into a round hole, but that element that we were able to add while Eric was on the field for us, I felt brought us an edge some physicality, maybe something that defenses weren't necessarily used to having to defend from us. And the thing that was, really positive about a player like Eric is that he offered an equal threat in the pass game. And that's really where 12 personnel takes the next step, is when you can put that grouping on the field and they feel like they have to put base defense on the field in order to stop the run game, and then you can exploit them in the passing game. And then they say, well, we're going to leave the nickel on the field, and now you can exploit them in the run game. That's where that's the dream. That's where you want to be in 12. I'd love to get there, and we'll see. It's just going to depend on how free agency and the draft plays out.
How do you replace that element? How do you replace that element, or is it just unique to all?
No, I mean, there's been a lot of teams through the course of this game that have been really good in 12 personnel. It was a step that we took last year. I mean, I think we were like 7th in the league in our utilization of 12. Now, some of that's Mike, and a lot of defenses treat Mike like a receiver in how they, their defensive personnel utilization. But we felt like we mixed and matched, and we're always looking for explosive, well-rounded players that, are threats in the run and the pass game. That's what we believe Eric is. There's going to be guys that we have a chance to add that will also fit that bill. Charlie, do you have a follow-up? Go ahead, Charlie.
How do you view the slot entering this year, slot receiver?
I thought that Dre made some really good steps. I thought, he made some big plays down. He makes that play over Denzel on the right sideline late in the season. I mean, I thought that was really a key moment in his development. That was a proud moment for a lot of us who have seen Dre work as hard as he's worked, and a lot of us to have the respect that we have for that particular defender. To see him make that play, I thought was big. I thought he made a lot of big plays this year. I thought he really filled that role well, and his skill set afforded us the flexibility to really move Jamar as much as we moved him, and that was, that's due to what Jamar can do first and foremost, but what Dre can do helped. So really like the trajectory of Dre's career. Expect him to continue that upward movement. Obviously, Mike played a role for us there as well. Mike's a free agent. Loved being able to work with Mike. Hope I can continue to work with Mike, and if we can, then he'll certainly factor in a major component of that as well.
As coordinator, what position groups do you study?
All of them. Yeah, I mean, that's my responsibility. I probably watch a little bit less quarterback than the rest of them, which is, my background is that position, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, I'll watch probably not to maybe the overall extent that each individual position coach gets a chance to really, truly dive all the way into every prospect, but I'll watch them all as much as I can. I'll at least have a surface level opinion on all these guys that are going to be draft eligible and in free agency. And then once we get a little bit closer to the decision-making process and I have maybe a little bit smaller universe, then I'll really dive in and make sure I know as much as I possibly can about these guys, because that's my job. It's what I'm responsible for.
How much do you feel like you've grown from his time last year to now being in the role? Do you feel like it made you a better coach with more responsibility you got?
Definitely, I feel like I stand here in this exact awkward spot with my back to the escalator, a better coach than I was 365 days ago. I think I always felt like I was ready for this role. I really, truly believe that. But as you all know in your own professions, like, there's only so much you can be ready for until you're actually in the role. And then it's a lot of like figuring it out as you go. And so I feel like I have a really strong support system around me in terms of our position coaches, obviously tremendous support from the head coach and the organization as a whole. So I feel like I've grown in a year, and I think I'll be better a year from now in this awkward position.
Something Zach talked about yesterday, Pitch, is not just building a one-score lead at the start of the game, but a two-score lead. And a couple of years ago, you guys were very good at doing that, especially during the 10-game winning streak. But what do you have to do? What does Joe have to do to get back to that?
Well, I think it's a hard league, right? Like, multi-score leads, you're talking about a league where the majority of the games are one-score outcomes, right? So, it's about making sure you're taking advantage of every opportunity early in football games. Like, the first 2 series of each team in a game really lays the foundation for what the rest of that game is going to look and feel like. And every game's different. It's easy to look back on a game and point out the key moments that happened at the end of football games, or that happened maybe at the end of a half or on a critical third down or what have you. But all of those moments are built on the context of what happened early in the football game. Same as season, right? All of our moments in the middle part of that season last year to the end of the season were built on the fact that we did not start the way we needed to start. And so we felt we had added pressure that we put on ourselves. So that's a long-winded, roundabout answer to your question, which is when you get a chance early, take advantage. No foul balls. Like they hang a curveball, take advantage. And otherwise, you're going to be looking back in a tighter ball game than you wish you were in late in the game.
I think there are people, draft analysts, that look at the wide receiver position and say, oh, well, you can find the next T. Higgins or the next insert star receiver. How rare is it to find that, especially when you look year in and year? I know it varies every year. Sometimes you have a movement, or sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
How hard is it to find a star wide receiver?
I think it's hard. You know, certainly there's guys that come out every year with really exciting physical skill sets. Guys that have had tremendous college success. Guys that come lauded by their coaches and teammates and schools. And you know, the part that you're never quite sure of is you know, how is this human being going to perform in the unique circumstances within our organization? And that's every team. And that's what this process is about. And you try your best to project that and ask the right questions and talk to the right people and figure that out. But it is an inexact science, clearly. That's why there's the turnover that there is. That's why you just don't know. And because we're always evolving, you know, something that might be a strength one year might end up a weakness the next because something happened in our lives that set us off. So when you have a known commodity, I think that's where, like, sometimes it's a little bit callous to just say, well, there's other guys that can do this, and this that I see this person do. Well, you just don't know. You're introducing a degree of unknown that is hard to solve for. So, you know, that's the part where it's, you know, you just get a little bit, and it doesn't mean that player's not ultimately going to be as good as A.T. Higgins but better someday. But you don't know. That's the hard part.
How you made that pitch to Duke and the front office, that specific point you're making?
We've had great communication with Duke, the front office, ownership. We're all on the same page. We're in alignment. We have a plan going into this offseason. We understand the caliber of player that we have and how important these guys have been to us. And like I said before, you know, it's my hope that I can continue to work with these guys and we can continue on the path that we're on.
Joe has made his feelings known, and as you were just saying, you want what he wants. You want to keep great players. Is it important to try to give Joe what he's asking for lack of a better way of phrasing it?
Well, I mean, we have implicit trust in Joe. Like, Joe catches the ball and makes the decisions in the biggest moments. We go as Joe goes. Joe's very intelligent. He's well researched. He's, you know, he takes his job very seriously, and he's earned a position within the organization that, you know, his opinions and what he thinks we should do needs to be accounted for and valued, and I think we're doing that. I think there's been really good communication throughout all of this. But yeah, I mean, he's a legitimate franchise, Pro Bowl, All-Pro, potential MVP caliber quarterback. So yeah, his vision matters.
What's that end of year review like with him when y'all sit back? I mean, how does that process look when y'all go back and decompress after season?
Yeah, you know, I think it's you look at it and you, just as you do with every player, like, what do we do well? Where's the room for growth? You know, high-end competitors want to get better. Doesn't matter what kind of season they just had. They want to be better. Joe's no different. And so, you know, what are some areas where we can grow? Where's some areas you can grow, Joe? How do we, you know, how do we make sure that you know, we've solved some of the problems that we felt like we had this year? So, I mean, that's kind of a standard conversation that takes place with everybody. And obviously with Joe, it gets a little more detailed and nuanced. But we always have good communication with him.
Was there a play this year that he had that impressed you the most, whether it was in the moment or when you went back and watched the film?
I mean,
I'm sure there's a bunch, but
gosh, yeah, no, that's tough. It's hard for me to even identify one. There's the big plays in the Baltimore games, the one at the end of the half, the one coming out of halftime where he climbs the pocket, makes the throw to Jamar over the middle. Obviously, the Denver game, I thought, just there's not one play, but it's just a series of plays and having the resilience to battle back when you feel like you've won the game and it doesn't work out, and then you feel like you've won it again and it doesn't work out. Just having the fortitude to keep pushing and ultimately, getting it done at the end. Those are moments that stick out to me.
That you talk about keeping Joe on. How much do you talk to Joe about that? Because he had this big growth in playmaking that he's obviously should be very proud of this year. But is there a balance in
Sure.
in that there's kind of you're going to try to work off of when it comes to strictly decreasing hits, like doing that everything you're talking about in protection side where he's responsible for a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a play style with Joe that's I think, and a competitiveness that's always going to maybe lend him to taking some hits. And so the question is, how do you balance that as an offense? I'm never going to be able to sit up there in a straight face and say, just don't do this, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to say that because there's going to be a lot of points and explosive plays that go out the window. So I think you talk to him about, being able to judge context, being able to see the big picture, understanding when this is appropriate, when maybe I can be a little more conservative with my approach. And then once you've had that conversation, you trust him to make the decisions. And he's, like I said, he's very smart. He understands all that. And so he's trying to find that balance himself of how do I be the ultra competitor that I know I am, put my team in the best chance to win, but also take care of myself. And so, we'll have that conversation 10 years from now if we're standing in the same spot. That's just who he is.
How much do you think some of the nature of last year, the amount of hits they took, or just the nature of the type of games you guys playing, where he felt the need to be this playmaker all the time, so many shootouts. How much was that kind of part of it too, where it's like that's not ideally how you guys anticipate playing games this year or most years?
I think that explains. That's a piece of context that you need to view all of what we did through. Like that's how we approach every moment we're in is we're trying to make the decisions to help us win the game in the moment against that opponent on that day. And yeah, we found ourselves in some shootouts. We found ourselves in spots where it felt like he probably felt like I got to go make this happen now, or else it's probably not going to happen. And so that does affect how you're able to play, and it potentially puts you in a spot where you have to be aggressive. And so yeah, we would love to be in a spot with more two-score leads where we can balance out the run pass a little bit, it's not even balancing out the run pass. It's maybe how the types of passes you're able to call that maybe put him at lower risk of taking some hits. Because we pass the ball a lot, but we're pretty good controlling the ball too. And so it's just different things that you're able to do if you can find yourself in those spots.
I'm going to ask the opposite question Paul's asking. You look around some of the biggest plays of the season around the league, playoffs, etc., where quarterbacks scrambling very quickly and even with some design quarterback runs. Burrow can do it. You got to protect him. Are you interested in doing more of those design runs or aggressive scrambles this season?
I don't know that the design quarterback run game is ever going to be a direction that we take Joe Burrow in. It doesn't mean that there's not moments to pick and choose your spots and maybe deploy those things intelligently and in a way that the defense isn't expecting. But I don't ever see us saying that's going to be a focal point of what we do.
Or maybe like another speed option, having more of those.
Sure. I mean, it's giving him those tools so that in the moment, if he sees a vulnerability, he can take advantage of it. And again, that speaks to the bigger picture, protecting himself, knowing that it's the right time to do it right now, and it's worth the cost benefit makes sense. So we're always going to give him those tools, and it's going to be it's going to be part of his game.
Coach Taylor has mentioned there needs to be changes made to off-season programs, training camp.
Well, I mean, I think none of us is accepting of, putting ourselves in an early season hole the way we have in recent years. And so we have to be willing to look at all the factors that lead to that. Zach and I have great conversation all the time. So if that has to do with, maybe how training camp's structured or how OTAs are structured, or, there are rules and limitations as to what we can do, right? I mean, there's not, this isn't, Junction Boys. Like we can't just, go out there and have 3-a-days, and that's not the world we live in, nor is it the world we want to live in. But there, obviously are things that we can tweak. We'll be in constant conversation about that, and it'll be a focal point that we get off to a great start. That's good?
All right, love you.